Welcome to the 7-day National Online Workshop on Revised NAAC Norms and Procedures by St. Joseph's College Autonomous, Bangalore, under the Aegis of UGC scheme, PARAMARSH. Today, our resource person would be sharing his knowledge on Criteria 6, Governance, Leadership and Management, and Criteria 7, Institutional Values and Best Practices. We have with us Dr. Joseph Dorairaj, sir, who will be our resource person for today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I request Ms. Nisha to introduce our speaker for today to the audience.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome and introduce Mr. Joseph Dorairaj, our guest speaker and resource person for today. Mr. Joseph is a professor of English and Dean, School of English and Foreign Languages at Gandhigram Rural Institute, Deemed to be University, Tamil Nadu. He was the Vice Chancellor of Gandhigram Rural University from September 2013 to May 2014. He was a Fulbright Scholar in 2014 and visited education institutions in New York, Miami in the year 2015. He conducted a month-long teacher training program in Sri Lanka in the year 2007. He has also visited various universities, Rome, Netherlands, Paris, etc. Professor Dorairaj has a specialization in theory, and he has authored 4 books on myth and literature, interventions, essays in philosophy and literature theory, etc. Sir is the founder editor of a peer-reviewed journal called Gandhigram Literary Review. He has published 51 articles in various referred journals and 8 book reviews, and has completed 1 major UGC project and 2 minor research projects. He has guided 16 PhD students and adjuncted more than 95 PhD theses for different universities in India. What's more interesting is that Mr. Dorairaj is an assessor for NAAC since 2010 and has assessed and accredited 32 colleges and universities in different parts of India. 13 as chairperson of NAAC peer team, and was involved in the preparation of the NAAC accreditation framework in the year 2017. Sir has also completed 2 major assignments for UPSC New Delhi. On behalf of St. Joseph's College Autonomous and IQAC Committee, I extend a hearty welcome to our resource person, Mr. Joseph Dorairaj. Now, I invite Sir to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, dear friends. At the outset, I would like to thank the Jesuit management, the rector, the secretary, the principal, and I would also like to thank the IQAC, particularly the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Syed Waji, for this warm invitation. Thank you, Dr. Syed. At this juncture, I also would like to thank Dr. B.S. Ponmudiraj for this invitation. Okay. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. So once again, good afternoon, dear friends. And this afternoon, I'll be talking about the 6th criterion and also the 7th criterion. And please take a look at this slide. This is my presentation scheme. My presentation is divided into 4 parts or 4 units. In the first part or in the first unit, I'll very briefly talk about what the NAAC manual says as far as the 6th criterion is concerned. I'll be talking about both qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics as well. Then I'll be talking about what should institutions do with regard to criterion 6. So that would constitute the first part of my presentation. In the second unit of my presentation, once again, I'll be referring to the NAAC manual. So what does the NAAC manual say as far as the 6th criterion is concerned in terms of both qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics? And what should institutions do with regard to the 7th criterion? So that would constitute the second part of my presentation. In the third part of my presentation, particularly for the young institutions that will be going for NAAC assessment and accreditation in the coming years. I would like to offer some 20 suggestions, and I have titled it 20 suggestions for a better grade. Then towards the end, that is the fourth part of my presentation, I would like to give you an idea as to how the scores are calculated. So this is roughly the scheme of my presentation. And Dr. Syed has told me that the first presentation goes on till 3:45. There'll be a short break after that. Then the second presentation, that is criterion 7, that is from 3:50 to 4:25. So anyway, I plan to wind up roughly around 4:30. After that, we will have some questions and we will also have some discussions. So I will start the presentation. Now, dear friends, all of you are very familiar with NAAC. Some institutions have already gone for assessment and accreditation. Some of the young institutions are waiting to go in for NAAC assessment and accreditation. So the basic question is, how does NAAC operate? What is the methodology that is adopted by NAAC when it wants to assess institutions? So this is a very basic question. This is a fundamental question, and all of you are aware of the answer. As we all know, the methodology of NAAC consists of three key words. So the first one is, it is based on 7 criteria. Whether it is a university or an autonomous college or an affiliated college or a constituent college, the assessment done by NAAC, the assessment carried out by NAAC is on the basis of 7 criteria. And these 7 criteria are divided further into key indicators. While there is no difference as far as the number of criteria are concerned, there is a difference with regard to the key indicators. As far as universities and autonomous colleges are concerned, the key indicators are 34 each, whereas in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, undergraduate institutions, it is only 31, and it is 32 in the case of PG affiliated and constituent colleges. So we have the 7 criteria, we have the 30 plus key indicators, and we also have the metrics. And the metrics, as we all know, are divided into 2 categories. We have the qualitative metrics, descriptive, and we also have quantitative metrics based on statistical data. So as we all know, this is how NAAC operates. This is how NAAC would assess any higher educational institution. Now, you're already familiar with the 7 criteria because we have already done the first 5 criteria, namely curricular aspects, teaching, learning, and evaluation, research, innovations, and extension, infrastructure, and learning resources. Yesterday, you discussed criterion 4 and criterion 5. So now that you have done the first 5 criteria, so today it is my turn to talk about criterion 6, which is titled governance, leadership, and management, and it carries a weightage of 100. Now, the weightage is the same, whether it is a university or an autonomous college or an affiliated or a constituent college, it is 100. There is no differential dimension. So this is with regard to criterion 6. And criterion 7 is titled institutional values and best practices. Here also, NAAC does not distinguish between higher educational institutions. So the weightage is the same for all kinds of institutions. So today we will be talking about criterion 6, which talks about governance, and we will also be talking about criterion 7, which talks about institutional values and best practices. Okay, now what is the weightage? The weightage is, now this particular slide talks only about affiliated colleges and constituent colleges, both EG, UG and PG. It doesn't talk about universities. It also doesn't talk about autonomous colleges. Okay, so the weightage as far as affiliated colleges, constituent colleges are concerned. So what is the weightage in terms of each criterion? I have spelled it out. Anyway, my concern is criterion 6 and criterion 7. So for affiliated and constituent colleges, irrespective of whether it is an undergraduate institution or a postgraduate institution, it is 100, and the same weightage for the 7th criterion. which talks about institutional values and best practices. Okay, so this is about the metrics, quantitative and qualitative metrics. Anyway, if I get about what is printed in blue, I would like to draw your attention to the last two categories, namely criterion 6 and criterion 7. Now, there is something interesting about criterion 6 and criterion 7. Now, if you look at the first 5 criteria, curricular aspects, teaching, learning, evaluation, research, innovations and extension, infrastructure and learning resources, student support and progression. What you notice is we have more quantitative metrics and a little less qualitative metrics. So this is the case with regard to the first 5 criteria. But in the case of 6 and also in the case of 7, what we notice is there are more qualitative metrics and less quantitative metrics. And what is the implication? I will talk about it in the next slide. Now, dear friends, so my assignment is to talk about criterion 6 and criterion 7. Now, criterion 6, it is titled Governance, Leadership and Management. And as I said earlier, the weightage that is allotted for this particular criterion is 100. And there are 5 key indicators as far as the 5th criterion is concerned. I have listed the 5 key indicators, and I have also included the weightage that is allotted for each key indicator. So 6.1 talks about institutional vision and leadership. It carries 10 points. 6.2, strategy development and deployment. The weightage is 10. 6.3, faculty empowerment strategies. The weightage is 30. 6.4 talks about financial management and resource mobilization. The weightage is 20. And the last key indicator is about the IQAC, but then it is titled Internal Quality Assurance System. It is not CEL, Internal Quality Assurance System, and the weightage is 30. So these are the 5 key indicators as far as the 6th criterion is concerned. Now, I would like to draw your attention to this particular slide. This particular slide talks about the metrics. Now, I have already talked about it very briefly. Now, as far as the 6th criterion is concerned, we have a total of 16 metrics, and these 16 metrics are divided into 2 categories, namely qualitative metrics, which number 10, and quantitative metrics, which number 6. The weightage for qualitative metrics is 58, whereas the weightage for qualitative metrics is 6. Now, in my earlier slide, when I was talking about the metrics, as far as criterion 6 and criterion 7 are concerned, I raised an important question. There are more qualitative and less quantitative. So what is the implication or what is the ramification? Now, there is a serious implication, and that implication is the peer team has a key role to play. As we all know, in the new or in the revised methodology, the peer team, they look only into the qualitative metrics, because the quantitative metrics that has been taken care of by DVV, data validation and verification. So therefore, the specific job of the peer team visit when they visit the university or the college, it is to look into the qualitative metrics. So which means with regard to criterion 6 and also with regard to criterion 7, the peer team has a major role to play. And the reason is obvious, because with reference to criterion 6 and with reference to criterion 7, we have more qualitative metrics and less qualitative metrics. Fine. Now, dear friends, in the next 3 slides, what I plan to do is, what does the NAAC manual say as far as criterion 6 is concerned? I repeat, as far as the NAAC manual is concerned, what does it spell out? What does it articulate as far as the 6th criterion on governance is concerned? So I have called out important words from the NAAC manual itself. Okay, fine. Now I have 3 slides on this. Okay, so what are the points? So the first one, it talks about the governance of the institution, and the NAAC manual asks a very specific question. Is the governance of the institution, whether it is a university or an autonomous college or an affiliated college, is it in consonance with, is it in tune with the vision and the mission of the institution? So this is 6.1.1. Important question: has the college or has the university prepared a vision document, a perspective plan, spelling out or articulating its short-term goals and also long-term goals? So that is 6.2.1. Then in 6.2.2, the various positions in the university, the various positions in the college, like the principal, the deputy principal, the IQAC coordinator, the dean, the head of the department, is the hierarchy spelled out very clearly? Who comes under whom, who is above and who is below? So the organogram, the hierarchy hasn't been spelled out very clearly. So that is the concern of 6.2.2. And I have two more slides on criterion 6 qualitative metrics. 6.3.1 talks about what are the welfare measures that are available for both teaching and non-teaching staff as far as this particular higher educational institution is concerned. The weightage is 5. Then in 6.3.5, NAAC would like to know whether the college assesses the performance of the teaching staff, particularly the teaching staff, but it includes the non-teaching staff as well. Performance appraisal system. Is there a performance appraisal system in place? And how does it help the teaching and the non-teaching community? Then 6.4.1 talks about audit, whether there is an internal audit, whether there is an external audit. So the audits, are they conducted regularly? And it also talks about if there are any audit paragraphs or audit objections, and how did the college address these audit paras or audit objections. Then in 6.4.3, NAAC would like to know what are the various strategies that the college has adopted to mobilize resources, and what does it do with the resources that have been collected? Are they optimally utilized? So that is the concern of 6.4.3. I have one more slide on this. Then 6.5.1 talks about the contribution of the IQAC to institutionalizing quality. I'll be talking about what is the meaning of institutionalizing a little later, that is towards the end of my presentation when I talk about best practices. So 6.5.1 talks about the role played by IQAC in ensuring quality, in maintaining quality, in institutionalizing quality. Then 6.5.2 talks about the incremental growth of the college. Okay, so last year, how was the institution, and this year, how is it? So how has the college grown in terms of books published, in terms of articles published, in terms of projects undertaken, in terms of infrastructure that have been added? So 6.5.1 talks about this particular dimension. So dear friends, so this is with regard to the qualitative dimension with regard to criterion 6. Now, what about the quantitative? As far as the sixth criterion is concerned, as I said earlier, we have 10 qualitative metrics, and we briefly looked into those 10 qualitative metrics. And as far as the sixth criterion is concerned, we have 6 quantitative metrics, and I have 3 slides talking about the 6 different quantitative metrics under the rubric criterion 6, which talks about governance. So 6.2.3, it talks about as the institution implemented e-governance. So NAAC would like to know whether e-governance has been implemented in terms of administration, finance and accounts, student admission and support, and also in examinations. And to what extent does the college or does the university practice e-governance? So this is 6.2.3 and the weightage that is allotted is 4. Now in 6.3.2, NAC would like to know what is the financial support that the institution extends to its teaching fraternity when they want to attend conferences and workshops, whether it is within the state or within the country or even outside the country. And does it also take care of the membership that has been paid by the teaching staff in terms of becoming members of professional bodies? So that has been taken care of in 6.3.2. Now in 6.3.3, NAC would like to know how many programs, how many faculty development programs did the college organize? Not only for the teaching staff, but also for the non-teaching staff during the last 5 years. I know during this pandemic and during this lockdown, almost all institutions have organized plenty of webinars anyway, so that would be a credit to institutions. So 6.3.3 talks about the FTPs that the institution organized for the growth, for the development of both teaching and non-teaching. Now 6.3.4, the question is, how many of the faculty members attended FTP? So there is a slight difference between 6.3.3 and 6.3.4, while 6.3.3 would like to know how many programs did the college organize FTPs, whereas 6.3.4, the question is, how many faculty members participated in FTPs in the last 4 years? And these FTPs include orientation programs and refresher courses as well. Now, 6.4.2, NAC would like to know the funds that the institution received, not from UGC, not from DST, that has already been covered under criterion 3, but NAC would like to know the funds that the institution received from non-government bodies, from generous individual and philanthropists. Now, this is the last slide as far as the quantitative metrics related to the sixth criterion is concerned. So 6.5.3, it talks about the measures, the initiatives that the IQAC has taken, and the weightage that is allotted is 10. And we have 5 questions under this rubric. Did the IQAC meet regularly? Was the IQAC involved, or did the IQAC initiate the collection and the analysis of the feedback, particularly from students and of course from different stakeholders? And how did the IQAC use the feedback that was collected for its own improvement? Then what are the initiatives, collaborative quality initiatives that IQAC has taken with other institutions, particularly in terms of MOU sign, then participation of the institution in NARF, and also the rank that it attained. And in addition to NAAC assessment and accreditation, did the college undergo any other audit by state or national or international agencies like ISO certification and NBA? So dear friends, now what I have done is, I made it very clear that the sixth criterion has 5 key indicators, and the weightage that is allotted for the sixth criterion is 100. And I also clarified that in terms of metrics, we have 10 qualitative metrics and 6 quantitative metrics. And what I did in the last 6 slides was, what does NAAC say? What does NAAC recommend as far as the qualitative metrics and the quantitative metrics are concerned under the rubric 6? Now, the rest of the presentation, as far as criterion 6 is concerned, okay, this is what NAAC suggests. This is what NAAC recommends. Now, in addition to this, what should institutions do in order to get a better grade? So, with regard to the 6th criterion, that is governance and leadership, what should colleges do? Okay, so I have 4 slides on this. Now, the first one, 6.4.1. Vision and leadership. Now, it is imperative, it is mandatory that all institutions, it could be universities, it could be autonomous colleges, it could be affiliated or constituent colleges, as far as the institutional organizational structure is concerned, the hierarchy should be spelled out very, very clearly. And what most institutions do is they prepare an organogram and it is mounted on the wall just outside the vice chancellor's office or the principal's office, where the hierarchical structure is spelled out, is articulated very clearly. Fine. So some of you may wonder, like, why should we highlight the hierarchical structure? Fine. So there are some problems. For instance, in a university, okay, I know I am talking mostly to college teachers, but let us take the case of a university. In a university, imagine the registrar is on leave. So who occupies his chair? Okay, for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, who occupies the chair? Now, in one particular institution, in one particular university, what happened was the deputy registrar claimed, he staked the claim that I'm the deputy registrar, so when the registrar is absent, I should step into his shoes. Okay, whereas the vice chancellor said, no, the controller of examination should act as the acting registrar. And what was the reason? He said, the registrar's post is a professor's post, and the controller of examinations post, that post also is to be held by a professor, so the 10,000 grade, whereas a deputy registrar is in the associate professor grade, so therefore he cannot step into the shoes of the registrar. Fine. Now, in a college, I have been to some colleges where there have been some problems. Does the dean come under the IQAC coordinator? Is the IQAC coordinator one notch above the dean or above the head? So who is on top, who is at the bottom? So all these hassles are there. In order to resolve all these hassles, the hierarchical structure should be spelled out very clearly, and an organogram will resolve most of these issues concerning the hierarchical structure. Okay, now the second point to be done is, as far as 6.1 vision and leadership, the institution should prepare a perspective plan. Now, NAAC makes it very clear, all institutions should have a vision document or a perspective plan. Now, the moot question is, do institutions do this? Now, in my experience, I am with NAAC now for the last 10 years, a little more than 10 years. Now, many institutions do not have perspective plans, or what they do is, on the eve of the NAAC visit, what they do is they hurriedly prepare a document, and 5 pages or 6 pages, sometimes done in a very shoddy manner, and then they show it to the NAAC peer team. Okay, this is our vision document. And I've also interacted with the principals of some colleges, and their argument is very clear. Of course, I don't buy this argument. Their argument is, I'll be the principal for the next 2 years or 2.5 years. So how do you expect me to go in for a long-term plan? So what the college should do in 10 years time, 20 years time, 25 years from now? He says that is not my concern because I will not be there. I'll be here, I'll be occupying this chair only for the next 2 or 2.5 years. So therefore, the principal, he or she doesn't have the mood or the temperament or the inclination to prepare a vision document. But it is very important for all institutions, whether it is a university or an autonomous college or an affiliated college or a constituent college, to have a vision document, or the NAAC terminology is to have a perspective plan. And this perspective plan should clearly spell out, should clearly articulate what would be the short-term goals of the institution. What do we plan to achieve this year? What do we plan to achieve next year? What do we plan to achieve in the third year? So that would be the short-term goals. 10 years from now, how do we envisage the institution to be? Where should my institution be 10 years from now, 20 years from now? So that would be a long-term plan. So it is important, it is imperative for all institutions, even young institutions, even fledgling institutions, to have a vision document wherein the institution spells out or articulates not only the short-term goals but also the long-term goals. And in some cases, what happens is the goals are in place, both short-term and long-term, but they do not have the strategy, they do not have the techniques, they do not have the methodology. So it is not enough to have dreams, it is not enough to have goals, but then you should also spell out the strategies that you should deploy in order to achieve or realize these goals. Now, the third point that I would like to insist is, now NAAC talks about the legacy of the institution. Now, in many colleges, in quite a few institutions that I visited, when we interact with the students and we also interact with the teaching staff, when we ask the students, okay, you have been in this college now for the last 4 months, for the last 6 months, for the last 7 months, who founded this college? When was this college founded? What was the motto of the founder? Now, many students are not aware of this. Maybe at the beginning of the academic year, an orientation program was organized, and maybe these things were definitely talked about, but the students have forgotten, or you interact with the young staff. Okay, St. Joseph's College, Bangalore. Who is the founder, or who are the Jesuits? What is Magis in the context of the Jesuit vision and mission, Jesuit spirituality? Who is St. Ignatius of Loyola? When do you celebrate his feast? Okay, these are important things. Okay, so institution should make it a point to celebrate every year the Founders Day. And the reason is very simple. They should be aware of the legacy of the institution. Okay, if I am at Gandhigram University, I should know who founded my university, who were the founders, what was the original vision, and how do we translate that vision in today's context. So that legacy, we should imbibe that legacy. Okay, so this is with regard to 6.1, and I have 3 more slides. Now, once again, concerning vision and leadership, decentralized governance. Okay, now all institutions would claim that they practice not only decentralized governance, but also participative governance. But the fact is, most institutions, I'm sorry to say, most institutions do not practice decentralized or participative governance. I'll give you some examples. Now, in one of the institutions that I visited in Odisha, the vice principal was signing the late slip. Okay, if a student comes late, he or she, if a student comes late, then the student goes to meets the vice principal, and the vice principal would give a slip requesting the class teacher to admit the student. Now, I asked the vice principal, is it the job of the vice principal? Why don't you leave it to the head of the department? No, 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 no. They should know that the vice principal is an important man. It is an important position. In other words, what I want to convey is institutions claim that they have or they go in for participative management and decentralized governance. But the reality is the powers are not shared. Whether it is the principal or the vice principal or the secretary, they would like to keep all the powers to themselves, and they would not like to share power, share responsibilities. So in which case, they do not practice decentralized governance. And one strategy, as far as decentralized governance is concerned, is NAAC would suggest that wherever possible, NAAC doesn't mandate this because it is not possible to have student representatives in the syndicate or in the board of management or in the governing council, but wherever possible, institutions should have student representatives, and we should start with the IQAC because NAAC makes it very clear. If you look at the composition of the IQAC, NAAC spells out very clearly how many members should be there, who are the members, and there should be at least one student representative in the IQAC. And the second question is e-governance. Of course, now there is a lot of e-governance because of the pandemic and because of the lockdown. We have switched over to the digital mode, so there is a lot of e-governance. But otherwise, in most institutions, there is very little e-governance, even though NAAC has been for quite some time talking about ERP and the management information system, library information system, but there has been very little of e-governance. Now, for the last 8 to 9 months, because of the lockdown, we have been forced to move to the digital platform. So there is some e-governance, and it is important that we continue this trend. Now, the next point that I would like to talk about is empower women and give them responsibilities. Okay, fine. Now, all institutions claim that women are given a lot of importance. I'm talking about co-educational institutions, particularly in universities. They say, oh, we have a lot of women staff. Maybe it is true. But then when we go for PhD visits, we ask a very specific question. Okay, it is true that you have women on your roles, fine. Okay, the Department of English or the Department of Psychology or the Department of Life Sciences or the Department of Mathematics. Okay, you have women, 5% or 10% or 20%, but we are interested in finding out how many of these women have been given important responsibilities. For instance, what do I mean by important responsibilities? The post of the registrar, the post of the controller of examinations, the post of the IQAC coordinator. These are important posts, but in most colleges, as I said, I am with NAAC now for more than 10 years, hardly any woman vice chancellor, and hardly any woman registrar, hardly any woman controller of examinations. And in the last 10 years, I have not come across any woman IQAC coordinator. But all the same, all institutions claim that they empower women, but without giving them responsibilities, without giving them positions and power, how will you empower them? So this is an important question. The next question is there a sound, is there a robust grievance redressal mechanism, not only for the staff, but also for the students? Now, different institutions have their own strategies. Now, in many colleges that I am familiar with, many institutions that I have visited, they have a box wherein students can drop their complaints, or they can send an email to the principal or the vice chancellor or the registrar. So NAAC insists that you should have a robust grievance redressal mechanism. And in fact, when we go for the PhD visit, we would like to look into the logbook, like how many complaints were received and how many were addressed and how fast, how soon were the complaints addressed and redressed. So grievance redressal mechanism should be there. Then welfare measures for teaching and non-teaching, including ad hoc and guest faculty. Okay, now as far as the teaching faculty are concerned, most institutions, I think they have a sound policy as far as welfare measures are concerned, because they have this association. So the association takes care of them. If somebody falls ill, he or she can withdraw some loan. Okay, or he or she, like from the insurance, can get some medical help, fine. Now, my concern is about the ad hoc and the guest faculty. Fine. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, I was in Assam in one of the universities, and I was the member coordinator. So we were interacting with the teaching staff, particularly with the non-teaching staff. And in that category, we interacted with the ad hoc and guest faculty. And when we asked them directly, explicitly, do you have any complaints or any grouse? And one one teacher got up and said, when I went for maternity leave, the management did not pay my salary. They gave me leave, but not my salary. Okay, so this was a genuine complaint, and she was a guest faculty, not a permanent staff. She was a guest faculty. Okay, we appreciate the management because the management was generous enough to grant her maternity leave, but the generosity could have been extended by giving a salary as well. So welfare measures for both teaching and non-teaching staff. And as far as 6.2 strategy development and deployment is concerned, like what could be done? What are the suggestions from my side? So I would like to give some suggestions. Fine. Now, in many institutions, they do not groom a second or a third line of leaders. Fine. Now, in one institution, I live in Madurai itself, when they constituted the NAAC committee, because they are going in for the fourth cycle of NAAC assessment and accreditation. So last year, they constituted a new team, a NAAC committee, and the principal made it very clear there should be one young staff. And the reason is she made it very clear, now for the next cycle of NAAC assessment and accreditation, this particular lady will play a key role. So in other words, the secretary was keen on grooming a second line of leadership and a third line of leadership. Okay. Now, how do you groom leaders? Okay, and you groom leaders. Please look at the next point, by deputing them for training in management and administration. Okay, there is a conference, principals conference. Now the principal can take the IQAC coordinator along with him or along with her, or the principal can take another senior head of the department with him or with her. So in other words, they should plan. And how do they plan? By deputing the second generation, the third generation among the staff members, so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they can take over the administration. And how do you practice participative management and decentralized governance? By forming various committees. The principal doesn't take all decisions. The secretary doesn't take all decisions. Okay, there is a committee. Okay, there is an examination committee. There is a library committee. There is an academic committee. There is an infrastructure committee. So suggestions and decisions emanate from these different committees. And of course, ultimately, the boss takes the final call. Okay, so various committees are formed, and the constitution of these committees, that itself is a clear indication that power and responsibilities are shared, that we have a participative management and decentralized governance. An institution should take care to organize FTPs periodically, and I'm happy that during the pandemic and during the lockdown, a lot of FTPs were organized. In fact, this particular FTP under the PARAMARSH scheme, organized by St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, this itself is an FTP, and it is a good FTP, and it has been organized professionally. So my congratulations to the IQAC team of the SDSG, particularly to Dr. Syed. So institutions should organize FTPs periodically. Fine. Now, what I would suggest is every month there should be a FTP. There should be a faculty development program, because we have a lot of topics to discuss. Maybe in January, the institution will organize a lecture, not by one, but 2 or 3 persons on NEP 2020. Maybe in February, you can organize a program on MOOCs. Maybe in March, you can organize a program on reforms in examination system. So every month you should think of some FTP for professional development. And the next point is depute staff to attend seminars and conferences on broad themes, not subject oriented. Not that an English teacher should attend conferences related to English alone. Not that a commerce teacher should attend conferences and seminars related to commerce alone. In addition to subject-specific teams, subject-specific programs, you should also be organizing, and you should also be encouraging your staff to attend seminars and conferences on broad themes. Now, what do I mean by broad themes? Okay, a seminar on NEP 2020, that is a broad theme. A seminar on NAAC assessment and accreditation, that is a broad theme. A seminar on examination reform, so that is a broad theme. Fine. Now, please look at the last point, and this is something that all of you should look into. Now, most universities and most colleges, whether they are autonomous or affiliated or constituent, they do organize programs for the teaching staff, but unfortunately, many institutions do not organize any program for the non-teaching staff. Now, in every college, there is a department of English. In every institution, there is a department of English. Now, why don't the members of the Department of English organize, let us say, a one-day workshop on writing skills for the non-teaching staff, or maybe a one-day workshop on some basic pronunciation for the non-teaching staff, or the Department of Management of a particular institution, one Saturday, one weekend, they can organize a one-day program or a two-day program on basic managerial skills. So in other words, most institutions, they neglect the intellectual development of the non-teaching staff. They do take care of the teaching fraternity, but unfortunately, not that they will willfully do this, but then they have not thought about it. So therefore, I would suggest many departments can come forward to organize some program for the non-teaching staff. Now, under 6.4, financial management and resource mobilization, I have some suggestions. Now, you ask yourself, I think there are more than 100 participants, there are 178 participants. I would request you to ask yourself, has your institution received any funds, either from the MLA or from the MP or from both? Okay, most institutions don't. Okay, but then the MP and the MLA, they have a lot of funds meant to be distributed. So why don't you approach the local MP or the local MLA? Okay, we need to construct some toilets. Okay, would you be generous enough to give us some funds? We would like to add some books to the library or add some computers to our lab. Would you be generous enough to give us some fund? Okay, so tap CSR funds. Now, all companies, all firms, big firms, they have to contribute to CSR, and some companies that I am familiar with, they have the funds, but then they do not know what to do with the funds. So they are waiting for the proper institution to approach them. So CSR funds, corpus fund, please ask yourself, does your college, does your institution have corpus fund? And did you contribute to the corpus fund? And how much did you contribute to the corpus fund? Because corpus fund, all institutions should have a corpus fund. On any rainy day, you can dip into the corpus fund. Fine. Now, the next point that I would like to talk about is optimum utilization of resources. Okay, so all colleges, I think they manage with decent resources. Okay, uh, our institutions, they are not like the IISc Bengaluru or IITs or NITs. They have limited resources, but these limited resources, how are they used? How are they utilized? Optimum utilization. So this is a big question mark. Then cashless transaction. Now the UGC has made it very clear that we should go in for cashless transaction. Then the next point is an important point, and this is one of the points that I have discovered in my NAAC peer team visits. And this would apply particularly to private colleges. Government colleges, anyway, they have to go in for tender. Like in the government college, if they want to put up a canteen, or if they want to build a stadium, or they want to build a classroom, they have to go in for tender. But whereas in the case of private colleges, private institutions, there is no compulsion that they should go in for tender. So some of the institutions that I have visited, they don't call for tender, and but calling for tender, I think, is a healthy practice, is one of the best practices in finance. So please make it a point to go in for tender. Then audit, of course, NAC talks about audit, both internal and external, and you should also address audit objections, if any. Fine. Now, this is my last slide. As far as the sixth criterion is concerned, after this slide, we will have a short break. Then I will resume. When I resume, I will switch over to the seventh criterion. Now, this is an important slide. This is an important slide because it talks about an important constituent or an important component of the institution, namely the IQAC. Now, if you ask me to describe the IQAC, I would describe it in one word. I would call it the soul of the institution. Okay, because it is vital, it is important, it, it plays a key role in the development of the college fund. So the next 8 or 9 points, they pertain to not only to the composition of the IQAC, but also the functioning of the IQAC. So the first point that we have to bear in mind is the position of the IQAC should be as per NAAC norms. NAAC has made it very clear. Okay, for a university, these are the norms. For an autonomous college, these are the guidelines. For an affiliated or a constituent college, these are the guidelines. So the institutions, when you form the IQAC, please see to it that you religiously, meticulously follow the guidelines spelled out by NAAC, and please include a student representative. Fine. Now, the next point is an interesting point. Why do I say interesting? Interesting because when you go on an NAAC peer team visit, you ask for the logbook. Okay, you visit the IQAC, you ask for the logbook. How many times did the IQAC meet? Okay. Now, during the ordinary year, the IQAC hardly meets, and the IQAC coordinator will also say there is no need. nothing eventful happened. So therefore, the IQAC did not meet. Okay, so that is during ordinary times, during regular times. But when the when the institution is going in for, let us say, the first cycle or the second cycle or the third cycle, then the IQAC coordinator calls for frequent meetings. Now, what I would suggest is, okay, depending on the need, okay, in addition to that, the IQAC coordinator should make it a point like every 3 months or every 3 months, even if there is no pressing business, I think he or she should call for an IQAC meeting, because the mandate is the IQAC should meet regularly. Fine. Now, the IQAC, one of the jobs of the IQAC to send the AQR to NAAC regularly every year, and also to NARF every year. Then it is imperative that the IQAC coordinator or the IQAC director is in major committees. Okay, you have the research committee in the college. One of the members should be the IQAC director. You have an examination reform committee. One of the members of the committee should be the IQAC director. Planning and Monitoring Board, one of the members should be the IQAC director. Infrastructure Development Committee, one of the members should be the IQAC director. So the IQAC director, because the IQAC, as I said earlier, is the soul of the institution, he or she should be in all major committees. And if you ask me, in addition to preparing the institution for NAAC visit or for sending the AQR to NAAC or the NARF every year, I would say an important assignment that is given to the IQAC is to set benchmarks for each department and for the college as a whole. Because benchmarking is very different. Benchmarking, which is closely related to best practices, that is very important for the growth and development of any institution. And it is the job of the IQAC coordinator, because he knows what the Department of English has done, what the Department of Chemistry has done, what the Department of Hindi has done, what the Department of Mathematics has done. So the IQAC coordinator talks to the head of the maths department and says, sir, last year you did not organize any seminars, so this year you please organize seminars. Or the IQAC director talks to the head of the Hindi department, I'm sorry, last year there were no publications from your department. Please see to it that there are at least 5 publications. So benchmarks should be set, and this is the mandate of the IQAC coordinator. Then the next job of the IQAC coordinator, as we all know, is to collect feedback not only from students, but from the other stakeholders as well, particularly from the parents and the employers. Then it is the responsibility of the IQAC coordinator to arrange for academic and administrative audits, and also to organize ATPs. I don't know how many of these institutions, 187 participants are there. How many of your institutions, the IQAC cell of your institution, does it bring out any IQAC newsletter? Is it a hard copy or is it a soft copy? Even if you do not have a hard copy, you can have at least a e-version of the IQAC network. So please think about it when you get back to your institution after this workshop. I know this is a virtual workshop. So when you get back, you please suggest your IQAC coordinator to start with a 4-page IQAC newsletter, maybe an e-version. Later, of course, you can have a print version. And please look at the last point. It is the job, it is the responsibility, it is the mandate of the IQAC to help the members of the college, the administration, the teaching faculty, the non-teaching faculty, and also the students to internalize, to personalize, to internalize, not only to internalize, but also to institutionalize best practices so that it becomes part of their system, part of their culture, part of their ethos. So dear friends, I have completed the first part of my presentation. So what did I do in the first part of the presentation? I drew your attention to the 6th criterion, which talks about governance and leadership, and I made it abundantly clear that it has 5 key indicators, it has 10 qualitative metrics, it has 6 quantitative metrics, and the total weightage is 100 as far as the 6th criterion is concerned. And I also underlined the fact that as far as the 6th criterion is concerned, the peer team visit has a major role to play because more number of qualitative metrics than quantitative metrics. And I also talked about what NAAC suggests as far as the sixth criterion is concerned. I have pulled out some keywords from the NAAC manual itself, and I have added my own thoughts, my own reflections, and my own suggestions as far as the sixth criterion is concerned. So I'll stop here. So thank you very much, and over to Dr. Syed for some announcements. So we will have a short break, and I will resume. When we resume, I'll be talking about the seventh criterion, namely institutional values and best practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation. So we will have a short break for 5 minutes, and I request Wajid sir to make his announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Joseph and Dr. Vaishnavi. Uh, Dear participants, I just wanted to bring your attention towards the final day that's coming up, that is on 15th. That's going to be the last day of the workshop, the 7th day of the workshop. Okay, so two parts we are going to split the entire event. The first one is going to be the panel discussion. So I have been telling again and again. So the panel discussion here is on self-study report, the success mantra, the know-how. So two eminent NAAC advisors are the panelists here. So I urge again all of you to kindly mail the questions to me on or before, that is 15th morning by 11 a.m. Also, so kindly send me mails regarding the queries that you have about the SSR report. Okay, so that is one. So the split up of the time roughly would be from 3 to 3:50 p.m. on 15th. We'll have the panel discussion, followed by which we'll have the valedictory. During the valedictory, we would request you to kindly, give in your feedback about the workshop. So kindly be prepared for the same. I also want to request all of you to kindly join 10 minutes before we start the session. So if it's 3 by 2:55, 2:58 latest, I would request you all to be present, because the trend that I see is people keep joining even after the session. Here it's from IQAC and we talk about quality. I think quality should be there in all aspects, whether I'm being part of a session or I join a workshop, whatever. So a little sort of time presence is very important for all of us. I know all of you are busy, but try to dedicate some time when you are part of such workshops. So kindly join in sharp 2:55, 2:58, and then be there till the end of the session. The links are going to be posted during the session. It could be towards the end of the session. It could be also in between the session. Try to take part in giving your feedback, because it is required for us to work better and the best for our future workshop. Okay, and also keep in mind, because in case you miss this link, later mailing to us again, we getting back with the link, it's going to be a little sort of inconvenience cost. Okay, so I would request you all to kindly be there for the entire session till the question answer session, because the most takeaway is also from our question answer sessions. We tend to learn a lot with our question answer session. So I urge all of you to be there till the end of the program. Now when the link is pasted, kindly take part in the question answer session, in providing the feedback, and that feedback is going to be valuable for us at the same time, and also your job is also done, so you don't have to write to us again with the link and all of that. So kindly a kind request to all of you. We have been a great audience. Our sessions have been very participated. The number of questions that are pouring out day by day, it's increasing. So that talks about the engagement that we are having with you is amazing. So I request you all to continue the same, and one more day. So that's not going to be the end. We are still going to be connected with you through various means. We might be a part of your workshops or webinars, or you again can join us. So this is what something I'm kind of requesting to all of you. Tomorrow is the festival, so I wish you in advance happy Sankranti, happy Pongal to all of you, and enjoy your festival and be back on the the last day, the day of our panel discussion and the valedictory. So I urge all of you to be there by 2:55. So thank you. Over to Dr. Vaishnavi.
Thank you, sir. So we will take a 5-minute break now and request the participants not to leave the session and join back again. Please remain on the session and join back in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, dear friends. Okay, now it is my turn to talk about the seventh criterion, As we all know, the seventh criterion is titled Institutional Values and Best Practices. Now, for criterion 6, the weightage was 100. For criterion 7, also the weightage is 100. While there were 5 key indicators for criterion 6, we have only 3 key indicators for criterion 7, while we had 16 metrics for criterion 6. We have 13. We have 13 metrics for the criterion 7, title institutional values and best practices. So we have 3 key indicators. And what are the 3 key indicators? 7.1 talks about institutional values and responsibilities under 5 headings, namely gender equity, environmental consciousness and sustainability, differently abled friendliness, inclusion and situatedness, human values, and professional ethics. So 5 into 10, so 50 marks as far as 7.1 institutional values and responsibilities is concerned. Then the next key indicator 7.2, it is titled best practices. The institution has to list 2 of its best practices and the weightage is 30. Then the last key indicator 7.3, it talks about the uniqueness of the college, the institutional distinctiveness, and the weightage is 20. So these are the 3 key indicators. Now, in terms of metrics, as far as the 7th criterion is concerned, we have 7 qualitative metrics and they account for 73 marks, and they have 6 quantitative metrics and they account for 27 marks. So 7 qualitative and 6 quantitative. In terms of weightage, it is 73 for qualitative and 27 for quantitative. Now, the comment that I made about the 6th criterion in the context of the NAAC peer team visit, that applies to the 7th criterion as well. In other words, whether it is criterion 6 or criterion 7, the denominator, the common factor is we are more qualitative and less quantitative. And because there are more qualitative metrics, the peer team has a major role to play with regard to criterion 7, which talks about governance and leadership, and criterion 6, which talks about governance and leadership, and criterion 7, which talks about institutional values and best practices. Now, I would follow the same strategy. Now, the first part of the presentation, what does the NAAC manual say as far as the 7th criterion is concerned? And once I am done with that, then I would like to give my own suggestions and recommendations as far as the 7th criterion is concerned. So first we will talk of the qualitative metrics, and once we complete the qualitative metrics, we will move to the quantitative. So 7.1.1 talks about promotion of gender equity and women empowerment. Then 7.1.3, it talks about waste management, and that talks about different kinds of waste, solid waste, liquid waste, e-waste, biomedical waste, and what is the mechanism that is available in the institution to deal with waste. Is there a sound policy as far as waste management is concerned? So that is 7.1.3, and the weightage that is allotted is 4. Then what are the initiatives that the college has taken to provide an inclusive ecosystem or environment? In other words, to provide interreligious harmony, communal harmony, amity. So what are the initiatives that the college has taken to bring in an inclusive atmosphere or culture? And in this particular slide, there are 3 components. 7.1.9 talks about, have the students been sensitized to their constitutional obligations? Have they become better citizens? So that is 7.1.9, and the weightage that is allotted is 4. Then 7.1.1 talks about, does the college celebrate various festivals, various religious festivals? Does it observe commemorative days, important leaders, important functions? Does it celebrate the Republic Day? Does it celebrate Gandhi Jayanti? Does it celebrate Vivekananda Jayanti? So through this, the idea is to promote nationalism. Okay, then 7.2.1 and 7.3.1 are important. 7.2.1, it talks about two best practices that have been successfully implemented by the institution. Okay, we will talk about it in detail a little later. Then the last one, the last key indicator, 7.3.1, it talks about the institutional uniqueness or the distinctiveness. And this is what the NAAC manual says as far as the qualitative metrics are concerned. Now let us find out what does the NAAC manual say as far as the quantitative metrics are concerned. I made it very clear. Please look at the first line. While there are 7 qualitative metrics, we have 6 quantitative metrics. So the 6 quantitative metrics, I have 3 slides on this. So 7.1.2 talks about what are the facilities that are available in the institution for harnessing and for going in for alternate sources of energy, solar energy, biogas plants, sensor-based energy conservation. So all these are talked about in the NAAC manual. Then the NAAC manual under 7.1 talks about water conservation facilities that are available in the institution. In particular, it highlights rainwater harvesting. Is there such a mechanism? Do all buildings have this rainwater harvesting mechanism? That is 7.1.4. Then 7.1.5, Green Campus Initiative. Is the campus green, lush and green? And what were the initiatives that the college took to make the campus green? Restricted entry of automobiles, battery-powered vehicles, pedestrian-friendly pathways, ban on use of plastics, plus landscaping to beautify the campus. Then 7.1.6 talks about quality audits that the college has embarked upon with regard to environment and energy. Has there been a green audit? Have you got any certificate from the green audit people? That is talked about in 7.1.6. The last slide, as far as what the NAAC manual says with regard to criterion 6. So 7.1.7 talks about, is the institution a disabled friendly institution? Okay, does the institution have a disabled friendly, barrier free environment or ambience or ecosystem? And what does it mean by barrier free, or what does it mean by disabled friendly? Do all the buildings have ramps? Are lifts available? Are there separate washrooms for the physically disabled? What about the signage? What about the signboards? Are they also available in braille? And in the library, within the library, is there any assistive technology software? Because many institutions use a particular software called JAWS. So does your college have this software? Then 7.1.10 talks about, is there a code of conduct for students, for teachers, for administrators, and for other staff? And does it conduct periodic programs in this regard? Okay, so dear friends, this is what the NAAC manual says as far as criterion 7 is concerned in terms of qualitative metrics and also in terms of quantitative metrics. Now, I would like to give my suggestions and some recommendations. Now, as far as gender equity is concerned, I have a series of suggestions. I have a long list of suggestions. If your institution is a co-educational institution, make it a policy to admit more girl students and also recruit more women faculty. And as I said earlier, it is not enough that you have women staff. At least some of them should be given some important responsibilities. And please remember, I added this during my peer team visit for the last more than 10 years. I did not come across any woman vice chancellor, any woman registrar, any woman controller of examinations, any woman IQAC coordinator. So the talk of all the talk on empowering women, it is only on paper. It has not been translated into practice. So I think you should make it very clear that empowerment actually means giving women some positions and responsibilities. Then do you have hostel for girl students? Is it enough to accommodate all the girl students, or can you add one more floor or one more wing or one more building? Is there a separate counselor for girl students? And does the institution organize gender sensitization programs, not only for girl students, but even for boys? Okay, many institutions, what they do is they do organize gender sensitization programs, but their target group is girls. Absolutely fine, no quarrels. But in addition to girls, boys also should be sensitized. So therefore, gender sensitization programs, I think the net should cover everybody, not just girls, but girls and boys. Then every department has its own association, the English Association, the Chemistry Association, the Biology Association, the Commerce Association, and I'm sure there is a president, there is a vice president, there is a secretary, there is a treasurer, there are members, and you should make sure that at least one of the important posts, the president or the vice president or the secretary, is occupied by a girl student. Then girls' common room, sanitary napkin vending machine. Then some institutions, particularly universities, they offer a multidisciplinary paper on women's studies. And it is shared by faculty members from the Department of English, the Department of Economics, the Department of Gender Studies, the Department of Political Science. Maybe when you go back, you can think of a 2 credit paper on women's studies or gender studies, however you call it. Okay, it could be a multidisciplinary paper. Maybe to start with, it could be an elective paper. Then you talk of on campus, is there an anti-sexual harassment committee? And the NAAC peer team would like to know whether this committee has been established on the basis of Supreme Court guidelines, Vishaka guidelines. So this is as far as gender equity is concerned. Now, as far as 7.1 environmental consciousness is concerned, I would like to raise a few questions and also give some suggestions and recommendations. We certainly need to harness and tap into alternate energy. Now, most institutions have gone in for solar panels. I know initially it is expensive, but it is absolutely essential. So alternate energy. Okay. Now the next point, waste management. I know a lot of people from young institutions are attending this because this program, this 7-day workshop is being organized under the auspices of the PARAMARSH scheme. So you have 5 mentee institutions, young fledgling institutions. Now, please tell your management, I'm sure you are part of some committee. I'm absolutely sure that you are in some committee or the other. As far as waste management is concerned, it should be futuristic. Now maybe your college is only 4 years old. Maybe there are some 30 staff members and maybe some 400 students. But this is the scenario today. Maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm sure you will have more than 1,000 students. You will have more than 75 faculty members. So which means when you think of waste management or when you plan your waste management, you should be futuristic. Okay. Now, I visited a college in Delhi and I was the chairperson of the team. Okay. I think I will divulge the name because the college is doing a fantastic job. It was Ramanujan College and this was 4 years back and I was the chairperson of the NAAC team. The principal has done a commendable job as far as waste management is concerned. He told the NAAC team, this is for the next 25 years. Even if 1,000 more students join the institution, we have a pakka system as far as waste management is concerned. So therefore, the mantra is be futuristic. Don't look at today's scenario. Today's scenario, like we may have 400 students and 20 staff members. 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So you plan ahead, you think ahead, be futuristic. Then environmental consciousness, Swachh Bharat. And here what I would like to suggest is, now NAAC asks a very specific questions. Do you carry out the extension activities that have been recommended by the central government? So what I would suggest is you need to be clever. Your institution, depending upon where it is located or where it is situated, I'm sure you do you do a needs analysis, and on the basis of the needs analysis, you plan your extension activities. Fine, but what I would suggest is when you plan your extension and outreach activities, Okay, so at least some of those expansion and outreach activities should be aligned with the government programs, both central and state. Okay, then what are the awards that the college has won for clean campus, green campus? Is your campus plastic free? Is your department plastic free? And rainwater harvesting, is it available in all buildings? Do you have a sum? And how large is the sum? Once again, you need to be futuristic. Then vermicomposting, particularly when you have hostels, there is a lot of wastage, food wastage. So from that, you can do vermicomposting, and the conventional bulbs have they been replaced by LED. So this is as far as 7.1 environmental consciousness is concerned. And 7.1 disabled friendly campus, I have some important suggestions. Now, the government of India stipulates that in every academic institution, 3% of the seats should be earmarked for disabled students, and 3% of the seats as far as staff recruitment is concerned should be earmarked for the disabled staff members. Okay, so your institution, does it observe this guideline? Okay, so please ask yourself. So what about the infrastructure? Is it disabled friendly? Do you have ramps? Do you have handrails? Do you have lifts? Do you have special toilet? Okay, so these are important questions when you convene an important meeting as the principal, as the IQAC coordinator, as the head of the department. Do you have it in the ground floor, or do you have it in the first floor or second floor? Accessibility. Then during times of exams, do you arrange scribes for the visually impaired? There is a government ordinance which makes it very clear that scribes should be allowed for the visually challenged. And December 3rd is every year observed as the World Disabled Day. Okay, so please organize some programs to mark the World Disabled Day. And some institutions have this flagship program called HEPSN, HEPSN, Higher Education for Persons with Special Needs. I do not know whether the UGC still offers such a scheme. Anyway, important staff meetings in ground floor accessibility. Ultimately, what I want to recommend is please ask yourself, your college, your institution, architecturally and attitudinally, is it disabled friendly? Some institutions, maybe in terms of architecture, it is disabled friendly. There are ramps, there are lifts, there are special toilets, scribes are arranged. So that is architecturally. But what about the mindset? What about the attitude? So an institution not only should be not only architecturally disabled friendly, but it should also be attitudinally disabled friendly. And this is what we want. Now, I would like to spend some time talking about best practices. 7.2, it talks about best practices, two best practices, and the weightage is 30. Okay, fine. Now, the first point that I would like to clarify is, please look at the title very carefully. It says a practice. Now, what do you mean by practice? Okay, so my own example. Now, in one of the colleges that I visited some 3 or 4 years ago, I have at least two experience. One was in Maharashtra, the other was in Bihar. Okay, so in both in Maharashtra, in Nagpur, they pointed out to a herbal garden and they said this is our best practice. No, the herbal garden cannot become a best practice. It is an entity, it is a physical entity, it is not a practice. In another institution, they pointed to the gym and the principal very proudly said, this is our best practice. Now tell me, how can a gym be considered a best practice? It is a physical entity. It is a physical asset. So which means quite a few institutions have not understood the meaning of the word practice, best practice. So the first thing that I would like to clarify is it should be a practice, something that we have been doing for quite some time. So it is not related to infrastructure. A gym cannot become your best practice. A herbal garden cannot become your best practice. But I went to another college in Nagpur, Hislop College. There they have a herbal garden and they are doing excellent in terms of floriculture. Now, what you do with the garden, that could be a best practice. So the principal told me, theirs is the best garden in the whole of Nagpur for any function. It is a civic function, a government function. The flower pots are taken from the college and they get some sizable revenue, plus the students are trained. So in other words, the garden is an entity. It is not a practice, but what you do with the garden, that could turn out to be your best practice. So therefore, we go to the second point. It should be dynamic. Now, in one of the universities that I visited, they said this is something that we started 4 months back and this is our best practice. Maybe this was a good practice, this was the best practice, but technically speaking, something that we have been doing for quite some time. For instance, we can say for the last 24 months, for the last 2 years, we have been doing this. For the last 4 years, we have been doing this. And we have fine-tuned it. We have made it perfect. So this is our best practice. So please make note of this. It should be a continuous practice and it should be dynamic. And that takes me to the third point. It is not something mandatory or routine. For instance, in one college in Odisha that I visited, they said we conduct remedial classes for the disadvantaged students. So this is a best practice. Now I said this is nothing extraordinary. You are mandated to do this. You are required to do this. Now, all institutions, NAAC would insist, not only NAAC, other accrediting bodies and agencies would ask you, you have a lot of students who have failed in your examinations and tests. What have you done to improve the standard of these students? In other words, organizing remedial classes is a must, is something mandatory. Now you cannot claim this as your best practice, but then it is possible that you are conducting remedial classes in an extraordinary manner, in an extraordinary fashion, that before the conduct of the remedial classes and after the conduct of the remedial classes, if you look at the number of failures and the pass percentage, it is phenomenal. So therefore, we consider these as one of the best practices, fine. But otherwise, generally what I suggested is what you are required to do not claim it as your best practices. Okay? Now you go to the fifth point. This is very important. Now, when your institution is preparing the SSR and you have a committee, you have the IQAC, you have the NAAC steering committee, and then you want to talk about your best practices, what I suggest is, okay, this makes a lot of sense. You don't start with 2. You have maybe 10 best practices. Okay, then you eliminate, you bring it down to 5 or 6. Then you have the second round of discussion, the third round of discussion. Then you eliminate 2 more. Then you are left with 3 or 4. Then you can choose the best 2 practices. Otherwise, what happens is some institutions, they have only 2. Okay, so their eyes are not wide open. So what I would suggest is you start with a fairly long list, then eliminate, and you arrive at 2 or 3. Now, the next point is an important point. Now, who decides what are the best practices of this particular institution? Okay, St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, what are the best practices? Gandhigram Rural University, what are the best practices? St. Stephen's College, Delhi, what are the best practices? 2 years ago, I was at the University of Kashmir. They have some good practices, best practices. So who decides? Now, strangely, in some institutions, I notice that the IQAC decides, okay, this is our best practice. No, I do not agree with this. Please remember, it is the best practices of not the IQAC. These are not the best practices of the Department of English. These are not the best practices of the Department of Life Sciences. These are not the best practices of the library. These are the best practices of the college, the institution. Therefore, they should be collectively decided. Okay, and the best practices should be related to your vision and mission. And what I would suggest is, now NAAC has brought out a manual. This is a little old, maybe 15 years old. This was by Dr. Stella, Anthony Stella, and the former director, Dr. Prasad. Okay, so this is a beautiful manual, particularly if you look at the first part, theoretically. what are best practices, how to internalize best practices, how to institutionalize best practices. So the theoretical matrix is in the first part. And if you look at the second part, they give a lot of case studies. What are the best practices of different institutions? So maybe you can go through it. It is available online, and maybe it is inspiring. Okay, now the two best practices, what should they be? Should they be related to academics or research or extension or finance or outreach activities? What I would suggest is it is left entirely to the institution. Okay, but then if you ask me, I would suggest maybe one academic and the other non-academic. Okay, now look at the last point. This is very important. Now, earlier when I talked about the different responsibilities of the IQAC, I said the IQAC should not only set benchmarks for every department plus the institution as a whole, the IQAC should play a major role so that the different stakeholders internalize, not only internalize, but also institutionalize the best practices. Okay. Now, if you claim this is your best practice, then it should become part of you. You should internalize it. It should become part of the entire college. It should become part of the system. It should be part of the ethos of the college. So that is the meaning of institutionalizing. And of course, all of you are familiar with this format. So this is the format that is given to us by NAAC. And this is how we present our best practice: the title, the objective, the context, the practice, then evidence of success, proof of success, and while implementing this best practice, what are the problems that we encountered and how did we face those problems, and for better implementation, what are the resources, material, physical, and notes. Fine. Now, dear friends, I'll come to the last key indicator. This is something very important: distinctiveness. Fine. Now, if you look at the earlier manual, now for the last 2 years, we have the new manual, we have the new methodology, we have the revised methodology. Now, prior to this, now St. Joseph's College, I think you have already completed 3 cycles. Gandhigram, we have completed 3 cycles. We are going in for the 4th cycle. University of Kashmir, where I visited, they had the 3rd cycle. Then in Assam, I went to a university, they had only the 2nd cycle. Okay, so during that period, this key indicator was not there. So which means this is something new, something entirely new. Now, I was involved in the preparation of the new methodology. We had at least 5 or 6 settings at NAAC Bangalore, the headquarters. Then we had a one-day workshop in Delhi with the then education minister. And I'll tell you how this particular key indicator evolved. There is an interesting story behind it. Now, in one of the meetings at NAAC, the headquarters, okay, when we were revising the methodology, when we were revising the assessment manual, like there was some discussion. Okay, we have 7 criteria, we have so many key indicators, we have so many metrics, quantitative, qualitative. But imagine there is something special in my institution. There is something unique in my college. There is something distinctive in my university. And unfortunately, I cannot talk about it with reference to any of the 7 criteria or with any of the 34 key indicators if it is an autonomous college, or the qualitative or the quantitative metrics, meaning there is no space in the existing framework to talk about some unique dimension of my institution. What do we do? So this was the question that we discussed and debated, and we had a heated discussion. So finally, we came up with this. Okay, we will create something open-ended. These were the 2 words: open-ended, where the institution can talk about that which is unique or that which is distinctive, and that which could not be accommodated under any of the 7 criteria or any of the 34 key indicators. Okay, so this is the story as to how this particular key indicator evolved. So therefore, as you realize, this is a new key indicator. It is open-ended and something very special, something unique, something very significant to the college. not covered in the 7 criteria or the key indicators or the metrics, qualitative and quantitative. Now, in some of the colleges that I visited, after the methodology or the manual was revised, what I find is like they have some difficulty in understanding the distinctiveness or uniqueness. Like what exactly happened was in a couple of institutions that I visited after NAAC revised its manual, they were not able to distinguish clearly like best practices and this uniqueness or distinctiveness. Like there was a spillage, there was a crossover, so they were not able to distinguish and say, oh, these are our best practices and this is our uniqueness or distinctiveness. And once again, as I said, for the best practices, it is to be decided collectively, not just by the IQAC or by the dean or by the heads of departments, collectively fine. So dear friends, I have completed criterion 6 and criterion 7. Now I have one more section. Now Dr. Syed told me like this program is organized primarily, not exclusively, primarily for mentee institution, young fledgling institutions will be going in for NAAC assessment and accreditation for the first cycle. So maybe some suggestions. I have 20 suggestions. I will quickly go through this. I will not take more than 10 minutes. I have 20 suggestions. Now, the first suggestion is if your institution is 5 years old or 7 years old or 8 years old, it is most likely that you have not got your 2F and 12B status. If you have already got it, fine, fantastic, congratulations. But if you have not got it, please impress upon the management that the first thing that they should do is apply for the 2F and 12B status, which when you get it will guarantee sanction of funds from the UGC and MHRD. Okay, so that is my first recommendation. The second one, I'm sure you have a lot of bodies because we talked about it under decentralized governance and participative management. You have so many bodies, you have so many committees, but most of these committees in many institutions, they hardly meet. The library committee maybe meets once a year. And when do they meet? They meet in March because that is the time funds are sanctioned and the librarian says, okay, 10 days from now, 15 days from now, that is before the 31st of March, you have to exhaust the funds. So please buy whatever books you want. Okay, now this is not the way institution should function. The different committees, the different bodies, they should meet regularly. Okay, then the college or the institution can institute some awards, best teacher award, best researcher award, not only for teachers, but also for students. Then the next point is an interesting point. Okay, whenever I go for visits or when colleges and universities invite me to talk on NAC, one of the questions that I ask the IQAC coordinator or the webmaster is this: how frequently do you update your website? Now, please believe me, I am not exaggerating. In all cases, the answer was whenever there is an important event, we update the website, which means they don't do it regularly. Okay, there is a graduation ceremony, then the website is updated, or there is a new principal, the website is updated. No, this is not the way to do it. Like every week you update the website, like every Monday or every Wednesday or every Friday, the website should be updated. Now, if you ask me why is it so important to update, to constantly update the college website or the university website? Fine. Now, different stakeholders collect or gather a lot of information from the website. Now, if NAC asks me to visit a particular institution, of course, NAC will send me all the documents. But even before I receive the documents from NAC, what I do is, okay, so this is the institution. Straight away, I go to the website and collect as many details as possible. So that is why very often when we go for PAT visits, we find there is a mismatch of data. Because when you go for the on-site visit, when you go for the PAT visit, you get the latest data, you get the updated data. But then what is available on the website is old data. So therefore, please ensure that your college website is updated regularly. Now, the next point is an important point. I have found this in many institutions, particularly in North Indian institutions. Now, there is no bias, okay? So in North India, in many colleges in North India, when we talk about the extension activities and the outreach activities, when we ask them, do you have any extension program, any extension activity? Immediately they say, yes, we have vibrant extension activities. Fine. They do something vibrant, fine. But then when we probe, we realize that the extension activities are undertaken only by the NSS volunteers and by the NCC cadets and not by other students. And point number two, the extension activities are undertaken only during the NSS camp, which is once a year for 10 days. So what do they do rest of the year? No extension activities. No, this is a wrong understanding of outreach and extension activities. So 2 points should be borne in mind. Extension activities should be undertaken by all students. The idea is they should have a social conscience. That is the idea of extension activities, and not just during the village camp or the NSS camp, but throughout the year. And it should be discipline specific. The Department of English can teach them some spoken English, discipline specific, and something general, blood donation, tree planting. Then appoint women in some key posts, register alumni association and strengthen it. Then all faculty to get their PhDs. If it is a young institution, it is very likely that at least 50% of the PhDs, they have not cleared NET, they have not cleared GATE, they have not cleared JRF, they have not got their PhD. So I think criterion 2, teacher profile, it carries 60 marks. Okay, so this is an important key indicator, the teacher profile. Then every staff member to publish at least one research paper per year, only one. Only one. I am not asking for 5 or 10, and that too in nature or science, at least one research paper per year. And please ensure when your college goes for the first cycle of NAAC assessment and accreditation, please ensure that there are a few PG programs and at least 2 or 3 research departments. Otherwise, what will happen is you will get only a B, at the most a B plus. So make sure in addition to your UG programs, you also have PG programs, and you also have a couple of research programs. That is, if you want to ensure a decent grade, at least B plus, then please organize bridge courses, then formalize remedial programs and include student representatives in administrative bodies, especially in IQAC. Then transform your campus into a disabled friendly campus. How do you do this? Okay, ramps, wheelchairs. In our university, we have a battery operated vehicle which transports students from the entrance to the university to their respective departments, because some of the departments are quite far, at least 2 to 3 kilometers. So they cannot walk. So we have a battery operated vehicle. In some universities, they have this. And the auditorium. Okay, please ensure the auditorium, you have the flight of stairs on either side. So on one side, you have the flight of stairs, flight of steps, and on the other, there should be a ramp. Okay, so please ensure this. Then ask yourself if your college has a vibrant placement cell, and it is the job of the IQAC to conduct academic audit regularly every year, and MOUs should be signed, and MOUs preferably with academic and research organization, preferably. Okay, maybe there are some outstanding NGOs in your location, so you can sign some MOUs, but otherwise, like MOUs preferably with academic and research organizations. And for young institutions, what I would suggest is be futuristic. Now you may be small in terms of student strength, in terms of faculty strength, in terms of physical infrastructure, but think ahead, and plan for the future. Okay, so these are my 20 suggestions, and this is my last slide. Okay, now the IQAC director or the IQAC coordinator or the director of the NAAC steering committee, he or she, I think, should be very smart. Okay, now what exactly do I mean by this? Fine. Now this is hard work, this is focused work, and it should be smart work as well. Now what exactly do I mean by this? Now smart work, as far as NAAC is concerned, means you focus on the first two criteria. Okay, not that criterion 6 is unimportant. No, I don't mean that. Not that you can marginalize the last criterion that is unimportant. No, I don't mean that. What I would say is, if you weigh which is more important and which is less important, we realize that the first two criteria are important, curricular aspects and teaching learning. Why? Because the first criterion carries 100 marks and the second criterion on teaching learning, it carries 350 marks. So together, the first and the second, it constitutes 450 points. So instead of focusing on 6, instead of focusing on 7, if you focus better on criterion 1 and criterion 2, I think you are smart. And we should also realize that not all key indicators are equally important. All key indicators are important, but some are more important and some are less important, so therefore prioritize. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, in one institution that I visited, the alumni association is doing a great job. They are opening up different chapters, not only within the country, but outside the country. And when I interacted with the secretary of that institution, that secretary said, no, this is important for NAAC. But I said, NAAC will give you only 5 points. NAAC gives 10 points for alumni engagement, which is split into 5 plus 5. So only 5. So for 5 marks, you are doing so much. If they had invested that much time and that much energy on another key indicator, I think they would have got better scores in NAAC. Okay, so I am not against opening up of different alumni chapters nationally and internationally. Now, if you're preparing for NAAC, I think you should be careful where you invest your time and energy. And for the young institutions, what I would suggest is, like, sometimes you are at a loss, you don't know in which direction to go. What I would suggest is, almost all colleges, they have uploaded the SSR on their website. Now, St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, yesterday I saw the SSR on their website. St. Teresa's College, Ernakulam, they have got A++, their SSR is on the website. St. Joseph's College, Trichy, their SSR is on their website. Okay, so some of the outstanding colleges, A+, their SSR is on the website. So you please download, you go through their SSR, and whatever is relevant to your ecosystem, whatever is relevant to your context, your institution, you borrow, you adapt it, you customize it to your own environment. And lastly, I would like to end with a request. Don't cook up data, don't fabricate data, and don't falsify data. Okay. Now, in fact, I wanted to give you a sample of how the scores are calculated by the NAAC peer team. I don't have time, but all that I want to tell you is we adopt a 5-point Likert scale, 0 to 4. So 0 is extremely poor, 1 is poor, 2 is average, 3 is good, 4 is very good. Okay, so we use this 5-point Likert scale to assess each key indicator. Okay, so for instance, 6.2.1 perspective plan, the weightage is 2. If an institution does extremely well, extraordinarily well, it is 2 into 5, 10. Okay, if they have not done anything, then it is 2 into 0. Okay, moderately 2 into 2, 4. So this is how the scores are calculated. And of course, you are familiar with this. Okay, so if you're a very young institution, I think you should aim for at least a B+, and I'm sure you will do it. So with that, I complete my presentation. I thank the Jesuit management, the IQAC, particularly Dr. Syed and Dr. B.S. Ponmudira. And thanks, of course, to all of you for listening to me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this detailed presentation and the information about criteria 6 and 7. So we have a lot of questions from the participants. I'll begin, sir.
Uh, one second.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so we have one question from Ms. Shobha Devi. Ma'am is asking if is a vice principal must for institutions? Does the college without principal post gets less marks?
Okay, this is an interesting question. I will add another question. Should there be one vice principals or two vice principals? Okay, so the first question is, should there be a vice principal?
Vice principals.
And the second question is, how many vice principals? Okay, fine. So now if you look at the organizational structure as stipulated by the UGC or the respective state governments, at least as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, if you look at the government stipulation, there is no vice principal post. There is only a principal post, and that is recognized by the state government. But in many institutions, particularly in private institutions like St. Joseph's College, Trichy, St. Xavier's College, Palayamkotte, Lady Do College, Madurai, or Fatima College, Madurai, in all these institutions, they have this vice principal. This is sharing of power, sharing of responsibilities. And if you go to St. Joseph's College, Trichy, or you take all the Jesuit colleges, I am familiar with all the Jesuit colleges in Tamil Nadu and a lot of Jesuit colleges across the country. They have more than one vice principals. Like you go to St. Joseph's College, Trichy, there is a vice principal 1, there is a vice principal 2, and there is also a vice principal 3. So therefore, my answer is NAAC would not insist that an institution should have the post of the vice principal, but it is better that such a post exists for two reasons. Number one, power is shared, responsibilities are shared, but more than that, on days when the principal is absent, on days when the principal is on leave, somebody should step into his or her shoes, and invariably in government colleges, the senior most professor does it. Whereas in other colleges, the vice principal seamlessly or smoothly steps into the shoes of the principal. Okay, so my answer is very clear. The state government does not stipulate it, but most institutions have this post. It is functional and it is helpful. So therefore, it is better to have such a post. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The second part was, if there's no principal post, will there be less marks given?
There is an important question in governance. Any key post vacant? Okay, you please look into the manual. There is an important question concerning, okay, at the time of NAAC assessment and accreditation, that is during the peer team visit, did the peer team find that important posts were vacant? Now, I have visited some universities. In one of the universities that I visited in Punjab, I'm sorry, I can't name the institution, most of the key positions were vacant. The registrar was an acting registrar, the controller was an acting registrar, the HRDC, that time it was an UGC academic staff college, it was an acting director. So most of the key posts were run in an ad hoc manner, and that definitely pulled down the scores. Okay, so it is important that at least when the peer team visits the institution, the government should ensure that the principal is there. Okay, I have seen in Karnataka, I have visited quite a few colleges. Okay, so sometimes what they do is when the principal is not there, like they put the visit on hold. Okay, so only when the principal is appointed, then they invite the peer team. So the presence of the principal is crucial, and it plays a key role when the peer team visits the institution.
Sir, a kind request, if you can stop the slide sharing so that the audience will get a better view of yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the suggestion.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Miss Vidyulata from AV College, Hyderabad. She is asking if what is the NAAC-led duration for FDPs and workshops? NAAC-led duration for FTPs and workshops?
I'm sorry, I am not aware of it. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of it. Please look into the NAAC manual. Okay, but I think anything that lasts 5 days is absolutely fine. And 5 days, 7 days, I think these are standard formats. But if it is an orientation or a refresher course, it should be for a duration of 15 days. Okay, but otherwise, what is the minimum period? I'm sorry, I'm not aware of it.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. Harish T. Tirukappa. He has 3 questions. So he wants to know what are the essential committees to be in colleges?
Okay, they share the essential committees. Fine. Now, essential committees, there should be a library committee. Of course, we start with the IQAC. There should be an IQAC. Then there should be a library committee. There should be an examination committee. Then there should be a grievance committee. There should be a staff welfare committee. Then there should be a research committee. I think these are some of the major committees, but you can have as many committees as you want. But please ensure 2 things. Don't have too many committees because one individual cannot be in half a dozen committees. He or she cannot do justice to his role. And too many committees, and sometimes the output doesn't match the number of committees that you have. Okay, so you have like key committees, maybe less than a dozen. And as I said earlier, the committees, the various bodies, the various committees should meet periodically, should have logbook, and the next time that they meet, they should also be an action taken report. ATR is absolutely important.
Really? Thank you, sir. So he also wants to know, can the IQAC publish college level articles of students and staff online?
Please come again.
Can the IQAC publish college level articles of students and staff online?
No, now my answer is in 2 parts. Number one, yes, I think you should go ahead and publish if there are some important articles, maybe let us say a professor from mathematics or a professor from microbiology or a professor from English or maybe some outstanding students. That is the second part of the answer. Fine. Now the first part, it could be the IQAC or they could be a journal and you can have an editorial board. So what I would suggest is the IQAC can bring out a newsletter. IQAC newsletter, you can have a hard copy, you can have a soft copy as well. But what I would suggest is you have a journal, okay, and then you write to Delhi and also get the ISSN. Okay, there is a body in Delhi. I forget it because I am running a journal called the Gandhigram Literary Review. It was started 8 years ago by me. Okay, so well-established institutions. Okay, I will not recommend this for fledgling institutions. I will not recommend this for young institutions. Okay, an institution, let us say, when I say well-established, I will qualify it. Maybe a college that has been in existence for 40 or 50 years, or to put it differently using NAAC terminology, a college that has already completed 2 cycles or 3 cycles and in every cycle it has got A or A plus. I think you can launch your own journal. Quite a few colleges have their own journal. Okay, you can have it subject specific or multidisciplinary. But my only request is, my only plea is, do not make it an in-house journal because quite a few colleges, they start journals, but then if you look into the contributors, the list of contributors, you find that all 20 contributors or all 15 contributors are only from that institution. Okay, so you should make it public. Like once it is peer reviewed, then you publish any article. So therefore, my answer is this. It is a good idea to publish articles from staff and students. But what I would suggest is you publish it in the form of a journal, and if IQAC has to do it, then what I would suggest is the IQAC can organize a seminar on some quality related issue, maybe a 2-day seminar or a 3-day seminar or a 4-day seminar, okay, and collect the best papers, collate them, edit them, and publish it in the form of a book. So you have to decide whether you want a book or whether you want a journal. Either way, it is fine with me.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And his last question is, they have a rainwater harvesting facility, but they don't have any financial account details of this. So he wants to know if the NAAC will ask the bills for this.
Okay, now two things. Now, NAAC insists on geotagged photos. Okay, if you claim that a rainwater harvesting plant is there or a sump is there, whatever is your claim, NAAC says, please give us proof, please give us evidence. So that is taken care of by the third party DVV. So geotagged photos with the latitude, longitude, everything marked very clearly, fine, number one. Number two, the bills are important. Okay, if you don't have the bills, then I don't know. Maybe when the peer team visits, you can show them that such a facility exists. You can show them, you can show the peer team that you have this facility in this particular building or in these many buildings. But the NAC would expect you to submit number one, as far as the audit is concerned, bills, receipts, and number two, geotagged photos.
Thank you, sir. So there's one question from Dr. G. Rajalakshmi from Hindustan College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. She says that their college has been recognized under DBT Star College Scheme. And under which criteria do we bring this funding? Criteria 3 for research and innovation, or criteria 6 for funding from non-government organizations?
No, it is not criterion 6, it is criterion 3, because this is given by the Department of Biotechnology for research purposes. So you bring it under the third criterion, namely research, and not under criterion 6. I made it very clear. Additional funds, not from UGC, not from DST, not from CSIR, not from ICHR, not from ICPR, but from generous individuals, NGOs, and philanthropists. Okay, so this DBT should go under criterion 3.
Okay, thank you, sir. One question from Shrita Chandon from Montfort College. So each year for the AQAR submission, do we have to submit 2 unique, new each time, best practices? This would be difficult for a single department, to do so. So she wants to know whether they need to submit 2 unique, new practices every year.
Okay, fine. Now I have two answers. Now, recently NAAC had constituted a committee to look into the AQAR of autonomous colleges. It was a 3-member committee, and I was the chairperson of that committee. We submitted the report, and based on some of our recommendations have been taken well by NAAC, and they have brought out the new manual for autonomous colleges for AQAR. Okay, now the point is, every year you need not think of best practices. Okay, I made it very clear, your best practice is something that you have been doing it for quite some time. Like every year you cannot invent a new practice. Okay, so there is no harm in continuing with the practice. Okay, maybe you perfect it, maybe you fine tune it, what it was last year and what it is now. Okay, so we have made these improvements, we have made it better, we have fine tuned it. Okay, so that way you can present them. Absolutely no problem.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question from Rupanand Kumar. So, sir wants to know, under Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, college adopted 5 villages focusing on 5 different managements. So, can this be a best practice?
Okay, no, my answer is yes and no, in the sense, okay, so Unnat Bharat or like Swachh Bharat, like guidelines are given to you, and every institution is expected to participate in these programs. But if you have done it in an extraordinary way, very different from your neighboring institutions, and you have won accolades, you have won awards, you have won prizes for your extension activity under this particular scheme, then maybe you can claim it as your best practice. Okay, because I do not know the local context. Okay, so this is a program under the central government, and all institutions have been, whether it is a college or a university, all higher educational institutions have been asked to participate in this program. But if you have done it in an extraordinary fashion, and you have also won some awards for your extraordinary conduct of this Unnat Abhiyan program, then maybe you can list it. Otherwise, no.
Okay, so we have a question from Dr. Veena from Anamala University. So, sorry, yeah, she wants to know a few examples of best practices.
Okay, best practices, as I told you, NAAC has brought out a book, is a little old, maybe 10 to 15 years old, by Dr. Prasad, who was the director of NAAC at that time, and Dr. Anthony Stella. Plenty of examples are given. Or what I suggest is you look into the SSR of St. Teresa's College, Ernakulam, or Anja College, Sivagasi, some of the A plus and A plus plus. Their SSRs are available on the website, their institutional website. So you please look into that, then you will get an idea. Now, I'll like to cite an example from my own university. My university is Gandhigram Rural Institute, deemed to be a university. It's a central university. Okay, coming directly under MHRD. Now, one of our best practices is what we call VPP. I repeat, VPP, Village Placement Program. Now, what do we do under this village placement program? Every student of the university, whether he or she is an undergraduate student or a postgraduate student, whether he or she is a student of the sciences or humanities, is required to go to a village and stay in a village for 10 days, 10 consecutive days every academic year, study the village scientifically, and also undertake extension and outreach activities. Like the Department of English, we teach some basic grammar to the rural students, we teach them some spoken English. So this has been one of our flagship programs. In other words, we have touch the lives of the rural men and women surrounding the university. And in fact, this particular expression, touch the lives of people, this was used by the chairman of the NAAC peer team that visited our college for the that visited our university for the third cycle. And this is one of our best practices, and we make it even better every year.
Thank you, sir. For the information of the participants, the feedback form is in the chat box. So request all of you to fill the feedback form. Okay. So we have a question from Dr. Savita Murthy. She wants to know that if we attend the parent institution organized FTPs or OPs, is it benefited to the staff or college in the view of NAAC points?
Parent institution, would you mind repeating the question?
Sure, sir. If we attend the parent institution FDP or OP, is it benefited to the staff or college in view of NAAC points?
No, I am not very clear as to what the parent institution means.
Like if they are from the same university and attending the same university organized FTP or OP, will it be benefited to the NAAC points, or it has to be attended only from colleges which are organizing it outside the parent institutions?
No, not that way. Like if I can give an example now, St. Joseph's College, Bangalore is organizing this FTP. Okay, somebody from, let us say, the Department of Mathematics of St. Joseph's, Bangalore is attending this program, is attending for all the 7 days, and he or she gets a certificate. I think it is good enough. So whether it is from your own institution or from some other institution, all that matters is the rank of that particular institution that is organizing this seminar or conference or webinar, whatever it is, and the quality of the program. So let us not worry too much about who the organizer is. Okay. Now, having said that, I would add, if it is from an elite or a prestigious institution, there is an additional advantage. For instance, if I am attending a program organized by Indian Institute of Science, I'm sure that certificate is honestly better than a certificate given to me by another university which is not as well known as the Indian Institute of Science. I can give another example. If IIT Madras is organizing a conference, let us say digital humanities, and some other college in, let us say, Bhopal or Jalandhar is organizing a 2-day program on digital age. So the title is the same. But I would prefer to go to IIT Madras because the name, the quality, they matter. So therefore, from where you pick up your certificate, I think that carries a lot of weight. But there is no harm in attending a program organized by your own institution.
Thank you, sir. So we have a question from Dr. Francis David Raj. Sir wants to know if when decentralizing is so painful in the governance, is there any alternative?
No, there is no alternative. We have to learn to share power. We have to learn to share responsibilities. Okay. I mean, there is no alternative. Every institution, like every family, every teacher has to share power, has to share responsibilities. Okay, so I think we live in a society where there is mutual interdependence. We are not independent. We are not dependent either. Okay, mutual interdependence. I need you, you need me. Mutual interdependence. So we have to learn the hard way to share power, to share responsibilities. Okay, so this we practice at home and this we practice in our classrooms. Okay, you delegate some of the responsibilities to the class teacher or the class monitor, the class coordinator. Okay, so you don't collect the assignments. I will tell the class monitor, okay, it is your job to collect the assignment. So I am sharing some power, some responsibility with him or her. Like, at the end of the day, what matters is responsibilities need to be shared.
Thank you, sir. So, Ms. Anita Mahapati, she has a question. If the IQAC coordinator is also a teacher teaching 4 subjects in 1 semester, how much can be expected from him or her? Do you think the IQAC coordinator should be a full-time separate position? Then only all the expectations from the IQAC coordinator can be fulfilled.
Oh, this is a very interesting question. I think internal arrangements should be made. Okay. Now, very interesting. 4 or 5 years ago, I was at the University of Jammu for a NAAC visit, and 2 years ago, I was at the University of Kashmir, Srinagar, for the NAAC visit. Very interesting. In Kashmir, if you look at the composition of the IQAC, it is different. Okay, look at the composition of the IQAC at St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, or Gandhigram University, Gandhigram, or Madras University, or Pondicherry University, and look at the composition of the IQAC in Jammu and Kashmir. It is different. Different in the sense, the IQAC coordinator is a full-time job, a full-time individual, an individual holding a full-time job or a full-time portfolio, and he or she is paid by the state directly. So which means different states have different policies. Anyway, fine. Now the question is this: should the IQAC coordinator be a full-time person or a person who has additional jobs or additional responsibilities? Now, in a couple of universities that I visited under the NAAC banner, I found that in some institution, the management has appointed full-time IQAC coordinators, and the management pays that person. Whereas in most cases, such a provision does not exist in an aided institution, in a government institution, whether it is a college or a university. There is no provision to appoint an individual who will pay that individual. So therefore, what most institutions do is a teaching staff, let us say from the Department of English or from the Department of Malayalam or from the Department of Biochemistry, is appointed as the IQAC coordinator. And I will use this expression, there is an internal adjustment. If he or she has to handle 18 hours a week, he or she is given some concession in the sense you handle only 6 hours a week because you are the IQAC coordinator. So this is a purely internal adjustment, and otherwise the IQAC coordinator will be burdened. If he or she has to do full-time teaching and do justice to the job at the IQAC, then he or she, I think, will be a burnt out case. and that is not fair. So therefore, internal adjustments and some concessions, because this is a key post, this is an important post. So therefore, this demands full-time job, time, energy. So therefore, some internal adjustments could be made, and most institutions do this.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we have a question about distinctiveness of a college from two people, from Raghavendra KM and from Ms. Asha Abraham. So they want to know, can you give an example of distinctiveness of a college, and also how to quantify distinctiveness of an institution, because it is open-ended, how is it valued?
Okay, I will answer the second question first. How do we quantify it? Now, my answer is there is no need to quantify it, because it does not come under the quantitative metrics, it comes under the qualitative metrics. So you needn't talk about it in terms of numerical data, statistical data. You only have to describe it, you only have to narrate it. So it is descriptive, it is a narrative. So no need to quantify it, and you cannot quantify it as well. Fine. So that is the second part of the answer. Now the first part of the answer, I'll give you two examples. Now recently I was at a university, not for a PhD visit, but they are about to submit their SSR and they wanted some comments. So their distinctiveness, okay, so this is what they have written. I will not divulge the name of the university. It is a university. So they said, what is unique about our university is that we focus on an all-rounded education, or we focus on holistic education. Not that we focus only on the intellectual growth and development. In addition to the intellectual or the cerebral growth and development, we do focus on the emotional side, the spiritual side, okay, the physical dimension. So therefore, our focus is the student, when he or she goes out of the portals of this university, he or she should have received a holistic education or an all-round education. So this is what they claim their uniqueness or distinctiveness. Fine. Now I'll give you one more example. Now in one of the colleges in Nagpur that I visited, they said uh, our college is more than 100 years old. So it has been awarded, or it has been tagged as a heritage institution by the government of India. So this is our uniqueness, because no other college has been in existence for more than 100 years. So the heritage status is our uniqueness or distinctiveness. So this is how they projected the uniqueness or distinctiveness. And once again, for whoever that professor is who raised this question, once again, I would request you to go to the website, look into the SSRs of some of the best institutions, A plus and A plus plus, and maybe when you look at half a dozen SSRs, I think that will give you a good idea of how to talk about, how to narrate your own institution's uniqueness or distinctiveness.
Thank you, sir. So we have another question from Dr. Sonika Sethi, Sanatan Dharma College, Ambala. She asks, sir, our college is more than 100 years old. It was established in Lahore and later shifted to Ambala. Can this be institutional distinctiveness?
Now, two reasons. Now, incidentally, whoever that person is, I was in Ambala. I visited the girls' college Ambala some years ago, and I was the chairman of the team. Now, you can certainly claim it. You can certainly claim this heritage status as your distinctiveness. But once again, it all depends how you project it, how you narrate it. It all depends on how you describe it, how you project it, how you narrate it, and how you have to convince. You have to convince everyone, okay, so as far as our institution is concerned, this is our distinctiveness. Reason one, reason two, reason three, reason four. Like if you can argue it out and convince people that this is your outstanding quality, then of course there will be no quarrels.
Okay, thank you, sir. So another question from Mr. Likayat Ali. Sir is asking, in institutional distinctiveness, can we have upliftment of minority and socially backward backward and economically disadvantaged sections?
See, once again, what I would suggest is now you have to show evidence, not in terms of data, not in terms of numerical data, like you have done something for the upliftment of the minorities, you have done something for the upliftment of the rural populace, like you give some proofs, you give some convincing proofs, then maybe you can project it as your institutional uniqueness or distinctiveness. Okay, but what I would suggest is maybe you can bring it under your best practices and show it as your outreach activity or extension activity. I think that would be better. So which means you bring this under the banner of extension activity, and you can think of something else for your institutional uniqueness or distinctiveness. I think that would be better.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question from Mr. Raghavendra came. Is the anti-ragging committee mandatory? It is asked in LIC visits. Since geotagged photos have been asked from the last 2 years, what about the events prior to that, as we don't have them?
Okay, so there are two questions. The anti-ragging committee, it is a must. It has been mandated by the government of India. It is a must, and there are no two opinions on this. Okay, now the second one, for the last 2 years or 3 years, like you can have geotagged photos. Okay, but prior to this, okay, including my own university, we do not have geotagged photos. Okay, so what do we do? Like whatever photos we have, I think we have to submit this. Okay, but at least for the last 2 years we should have geotag photos. But anyway, henceforth, okay, so this awareness is there, like whenever we organize any program, any conference, any seminar, like any event, we make sure that the photos taken are geotag. Okay, so prior to that, like I think NAAC will give some concession, but anyway, I am not the NAAC spokesperson. Okay, so the IQAC coordinator of that particular institution can get in touch with one of the advisors at NAAC and maybe get his or her opinion on this.
Thank you, sir.
And
One
maybe tomorrow during the valediction, when you have two NAAC advisors talking to you, maybe I think this question could be posed to them. They are the right people to answer this question.
Okay, thank you, sir. One question from Mr. Raman Rajagopalan. Sir, can you suggest the duration for faculty and student exchange?
No, faculty and student exchange, I think it is decided by the host institution. Okay, now I went on a Fulbright fellowship. Now I don't decide for how many days I will be in the US. So it is decided by the higher educational institution. So similarly, when you go on an exchange, you're not the deciding authority, but it is the host institution that decides whether it is going to be 1 week or 1 month. But whatever is the period, it has a lot of validity, it has a lot of merit. Okay, so we should encourage staff and student exchange, particularly with well-established institutions. Well-established in the sense like globally known, like the top 100 in a Times ranking or top 100 in QS rankings or Shanghai rankings. Okay, if you get to visit any of these institutions, even for a couple of days, I think it is something meritorious.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Netravati KK, she wants to know, is there any prescribed criteria for assistant professor, associate, and professor? Generally, how many associate professors and professors are required? They are a private affiliated college, so how to seek NAAC sponsorship for FDP or workshops? We have still not moved for NAAC.
No, the second part of the question, I'm sorry, I cannot answer. Like only NAAC can answer. Maybe tomorrow you please raise this question with Dr. Ponmudi Raj and Dr. Rath. Okay, Dr. Ramya Kumar Rath. Now the first part, how many assistant and how many associate and how many professor. I think in a university, the stipulation is very clear. Okay, in a university, there should be a minimum of 1 professor, a minimum of 2 associate professor, and a minimum of 5 assistant professors. So this is the composition of a department in a university. Okay, so according to the UGC guidelines, okay, so you take my university or Bangalore University or Mysore University, whatever may be the department, the composition is like this: minimum 1 professor, minimum 2 associate professors, and minimum 5 assistant professors. Fine. Now, this is only for a university. Now, for a college, there is no such stipulation. So what happens is, in a college, as far as I know, everyone is an assistant professor. I repeat, in a college, everyone is an assistant professor, and assistant professors who have put in so many years of service, 13 years, and earlier it was 18 years, and you have attended the refresher courses, the stipulated refresher courses, then an assistant professor, he or she, by virtue of CAS, career advance scheme, he or she becomes an assistant professor. Now, on paper, the UGC guideline says even in colleges also there is a provision for an associate professor to become a professor, but state governments are yet to implement it. Okay, so 2 answers. Number 1, in a university, the setup is this: 1 professor, 2 associate, and 5 assistant. Whereas in a college, there are no associate, there are no professors, all are assistant professors. And assistant professors, after putting in 13 years of service and after having attended the required number of orientation and refresher courses, he or she moves into the cadre of an associate professor, and possibly in the near future, he or she, after satisfying all the eligibility criteria, God willing, and the parent university willing, and the respective state governments willing, he or she can also become a professor.
Thank you, sir. So we have one question from Dr. Beatrice Sequeira. So ma'am wants to know that for in each paper, the pass percentage is 40%, and overall it has to be 50%. So some students can get the 40%, but overall getting 50% may not be possible. So they will have to write a supplementary to get that score. So can this be overcome, or can this be relaxed?
No, the answer depends. If you're an autonomous college, okay, so you have your own passing board. If it is an affiliated college, then you have the university passing board, and the criteria will be decided by the university. So it depends. If you're an autonomous college, since you have the autonomy, I think you can decide. The passing board can decide. The controller, the principal, the controller, and the heads of departments with external members, I think the passing board can decide whether to lower the percentage, like, so that more students can pass. If it is an affiliated college attached to a university, the parent university will have to decide about the requirements and the stipulations of the passing board. Okay, so it varies from institution to institute.
Thank you, sir. So the last question for today's talk is from Ms. Malika from St. Teresa's Degree College. Ma'am wants to know that we have got 12F, but what is the criteria for applying for 12B?
No, I was talking about 2F under 12B. Okay, so this is an exclusive provision so that colleges can get funds from MHRD through UGC for assistance. Okay, like if you want to know more about it, please visit the website. Okay, so 2F, 12F, so a long list is given. What are the colleges in India that have got this 2F and 12B status? And if a college aspires to get this status, like what should the institution do? What are the requirements? So all these are listed on the UGC website. So I request you to please visit the UGC website for additional details.
Thank you, sir. So there are a couple of questions asking for examples of best practices in different departments. So is there any manual or any material that they can refer to? Because mostly those questions are about requesting examples.
Okay, now, as far as I know, I may be wrong. I could be wrong. As far as I know, there are no examples for best practices from individual departments. Okay, like even though when we do the SSR, when we write the SSR, like when we submit the department profile, every department should submit a SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunities, and challenges. Plus, every individual department should also mention its best practices. I mean, to my knowledge, no such manual exists, because the manual that we have on best practices as of now talks about the best practices pertaining to an institution as such and not to individual departments. Okay. Now, what I would suggest is earlier I talked about the IQAC newsletter, either the hard copy or the soft copy. Okay, so like if something interesting, something unique is happening, let us say in the Department of Chemistry, then that could be projected, that could be talked about, a write-up or a narrative or a discourse on that could be included, like inspiring others and like challenging others. So this is one way of disseminating information. Okay, so we can do this.
Thank you so much, sir, for patiently answering all the questions given by the
My
participants,
pleasure.
and hope they've all got the required information. So now I would request the participants to kindly turn on their cameras for a few seconds so that we would take a picture for documentation purpose. And this would be followed by vote of thanks by Dr. Priyanka Parmar. Thank you. Thank you all. I request Dr. Priyanka Parmar to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Vaishnavi. A very good evening to all of you. I quote, "Gratitude is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well." On behalf of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of St. Joseph's College, Autonomous Bangalore, I express my heartfelt gratitude towards our today's eminent resource person, Dr. A. Joseph Dorairaj, Dean, School of English and Foreign Languages, Gandhigram Rural Institute, Dindigul, Tamil Nadu, for accepting our invitation and giving his precious time for this workshop. We are grateful to you, sir, for such comprehensive presentations, highly informative, touching upon even the minute details of all the points of both the criteria, such as grooming second line leaders, women leadership, unique features of an institution, etc., and those very useful 20 suggestions for a better grade. We are also thankful to you for answering all the questions so patiently. Thank you, sir. I express my heartfelt gratitude towards our respected rector, Father Sueber de Silva, for his priceless guidance. We are indeed grateful to our respected principal, Dr. Father Victor Lobo, for his unclenching support towards maintaining a surpassing academic ambience in the college. Our heartfelt gratitude towards the audience, staff members of mentee institutions, and other colleges who also play a major role in making such workshops a big success by their active participation. I thank Dr. Vaishnavi M., Faculty, Department of Botany, for graciously doing the MC and moderator for today's session. Thank you, ma'am. I'm grateful to Professor Princy Nisha, Faculty, Department of Commerce and Management, for introducing our resource person. Thanks, ma'am. A heartfelt thanks to the coordinators of today's program, Professor Poonam Ahuja, Dr. Vaishnavi M., and Dr. Nikhil Jha for their hard work in streamlining the preparations for today's program. A sincere thanks to the faculty members who collated the questions from various media. We are thankful to Professor Clement D'Souza, Accreditation Ambassador PARAMARSH, for his support and guidance. We sincerely appreciate the untiring work put in by Dr. Syed Wajid, Coordinator IQAC, St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, and the organizer of the 7-day workshop. Thank you, sir. The session would not have turned out so meaningful and successful without your efforts. I sincerely thank Ms. Reshma, Secretary IQAC for the technical support, and Mr. Amal, Mr. Sampson, and Mr. Shankar for helping us with YouTube live streaming. A sincere thanks to all those who directly or indirectly helped in making today's session a success. Thank you all, wishing you all a very pleasant evening. We look forward for your participation in the panel discussion and valedictory program of the 7-day workshop on 15th of January. Thank you all. Over to you, Dr. Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Priyanka. A gentle reminder to the participants. So if you have any questions for panel discussion on the topic SSR, Success Mantra, the know-how, it can be mailed to wajid@sjc.ac.in, so which will be addressed during the panel discussion. Wishing all of you a happy festival.